Welcome to Recap Our Studio.
The film starts with a dying guy and a gorgeous lady at his side. Today we'll go over a 2004 war adventure film called Alexander Pelemustard, which was won in 285 BC by King Philip's wife Olympia, who helped her son Alexander sleep by singing a song while clutching a snake in her palms. Some claim Olympias is not a normal lady and that she is a sorceress with Zeus as her son. Olympias is startled by the noises outside, and when she asks him why he disturbs her, Philip abruptly attempts to seduce her aggressively, showing that they do not get along. When Philip discovers the pet snakes inside the room, he gets infuriated and tries to murder her because she refuses to heed his commands. As he sought to aid her mother, Philip pulled his son away. Servants soon entered the apartment. Olympias advises Philip to keep away from her and Alexander, and she bears his adversary. Alexander is sent to study under the famous teacher Aristotle, where he develops a passion in love, honor, and military warfare. He also found a buddy there who defeats him in fight, but Alexander tells him that this is the final battle he will lose and that one day he will defeat him. Aristotle lectures them about the ideal characteristics of a ruler. A horse festival is announced after a few days. Philip and his council members mock those who refuse to ride a wild horse. After a lot of work, the commander advises Philip that this wild horse cannot be ridden and is thus worthless. Philip likewise tries to calm the horse but is unable and orders his soldiers to take the animal. Alexander discovers it and tells his father that he wants to buy the horse and ride it. Philip tells him he is too young to ride the horse, but Alexander persists, and Philip agrees while his teacher educates him on how to tame the wild animal. He approaches the horse, and because of his amazing patience, the wild horse enables him to ride. People are amazed and impressed by his ability. Philip urges his son at night to avoid ladies because great leadership requires attention, and women are deadly in this society. Philip wants Alexander to think about his mother negatively, but he disagrees. Alexander develops throughout time, and his mother encourages him to marry a mustard one lady after seeing some suspicious Philip behaviors that would result in Alexander having nothing in his hands. Alexander grows upset and tells his mother that she is mistaken about Philip only because she has a strained connection with him. Olympia sought to persuade Alexander that he needed to disregard his father's ideas if he was to live. Alexander walks away, screaming that his father would not do something like that. At night, Philip hosts a party at which experts reveal that Philip will marry Atlas, which enrages Alexander, who throws a glass at Atlas while abusing him. This combat blunder convinces Philip to stop fighting, and Alexander informs his father that he will not take Atlas' insults to his mother. Instead, Philip advises Alexander to seek forgiveness from adults, which he resists. When he sees Alexander leaving without fulfilling his command, Philip erupts in wrath. Philip attempts to stop Alexander but becomes asleep due to the liquor he consumes. Greek city-states rebel, violating contracts with Macedonia, and condemn Alexander as an untested leader. After King Philip is assassinated, Alexander, at the age of 20, becomes king of Macedonia. Alexander's life abruptly altered. Persia is glad to find that their desire looks to be the same. This enraged Alexander, and he massacred thousands of men in the terrible city of Thieves. The Greeks intended to be startled and defeated. Although Alexander handled the bulk of the populace magnanimously in the end, the people primarily remember him for his intentions for the people of Thieves, Gaza and Syria, and subsequently Persepolis in Persia and others. At the age of 21, Alexander invaded Asia with an army of 40,000 trained troops, rapidly conquering all of Western Asia south of Egypt. Egypt crowns him king and worships him, thinking him to be Zeus' son. He ultimately provokes Darius himself to war, and the conflict takes place in the heart of the Persian Empire near Babylon. Alexander faces almost 250,000 barbarians. Alexander had desired for that day his whole life, and he persuades and teaches his commanders on the battle strategy, but some are terrified since they are outnumbered by barbarian warriors, but Alexander is confident because he feels he can win the conflict. He informs them that he intends to assassinate Darius the Barbarian Monarch since the gods have finally given him to him, and the barbarians cannot battle without the aid of a king. Alexander promises his people that they will be prosperous after the fight tomorrow. FSTN. His boyhood buddy likewise assures him that he is certain he will win the war, but this seems to be a far larger battle to him. When FSTN compares him to Achilles, Alexander says that Hephaestion must be as Patroclus Achilles' lover, and when FSTN mentions Patroclus dying first, Alexander pledges that if Hephaestion dies first, he would follow him into the hereafter, as Achilles had done for Persepolis. Alexander sacrificed a black bull the following morning as a favorable omen before the conflict, as his 40,000 soldiers prepared for war. Alexander pays them a visit and admires their talents since they have won many wars with him. The army looks to be pleased and confident for the fight. Alexander orders his men to conquer their dread of death and promises them triumph. Alexander puts on his armor and tells his warriors that if he dies in combat, they should remember him for fighting valiantly on Gog. Melanie de the war starts when Alexander announces Greece's independence and grandeur. The Alexander army fights admirably, and some of them die in combat. After a protracted struggle, Alexander locates King Darius and orders his armies to rush at him in order to kill him, but King Darius manages to flee. Soon after, a soldier approaches Alexander and informs him that his father needs assistance in fighting. Alexander intended to pursue Darius, but instead he assists his warriors. The conflict finishes as Darius flees the battlefield. Alexander becomes depressed and cries up in the evening after witnessing his troops maimed and killed in combat. Alexander, however, became king of the Babylonian Empire after 25 years. In a dream as legendary to the Greeks as Achilles' victory over the Trojans. Everyone loves Alexander, but in the end, he feels Babylon is a much easier mistress to enter than she is to depart. Because the Babylon Empire is wealthy in money and riches, Alexander's army becomes wealthier. Alexander's commanders are ecstatic, but he advises them not to grow greedy, since this would lead them to lose strength. He informs them that Darius is the real king of Asia for as long as he breathes, and that he considers himself the king of the air, and that he intends to murder Darius. He notifies his superior that Darius must be located. In his castle, Alexander sees lovely females, and shortly after, a man presents him with the princess of Babylon. Darius' daughter, Hera, the princess of the Thousand Roses, begs Alexander to spare her family's death. Alexander tells her that he has not come to hurt or frighten them, and that they may go on living their lives as before. Everyone is taken away by Alexander's kindness. Alexander gets a letter from her mother late at night, and she challenges him about why he remains in Babylon for 3 months while leaving her in Pella at the mercy of her adversaries. She tells him that Antipater, whom he is suspected of working for, is growing in power. She cautions Alexandria to be careful of the Babylonians, comparing them to turnable snakes. She also advises him to avoid men who overthink things and to remain close to him. Finally, she claims that only a dark intellect like mine can understand the mysteries of the heart. And, as far as she knows, Alexander is Zeus' son, and his comrades will be shadows in the underworld, but his name will live on in history as the most magnificent and inspirational. The campaign in Persia's northeast became a 3-year-long, grueling guerrilla struggle. Alexander pursued Darius near Bactria but was stopped by our forces. His soldier tells him that he was hurt and wants to sip water before dying. This shows that Darius' men betrayed him. Alexander mourns Darius' death and pursues Darius' murderers into uncharted places. The Oxus River is how Alexander enters Sadia. He battled them as passionately as he had fought mythical heroes and unknown steppes in the city. The surveyors told Alexander that they had arrived at the boundary between Europe and Asia. They looked to be entirely lost. Alexander finds his 10th Alexandria and populates it with veterans, their wives, and anybody daring enough to live on the frontier. Alexander continued in defeating every recalcitrant tribe until the day he got the head of his last foe and surrendered. Alexander lingered on the hill at night to watch some of the group females dance. After seeing Roxana's apparent interest in Alexander the following morning, Alexander resolved to marry the hill chief's daughter Roxana. Phyllis explains his desire to marry her. Alexander tells him that he intends to have a son to continue his ancestry. Because it would be insulting to Macedon's honor, Alexander's officers disagreed with him. But Alexander was dead set on marrying Roxana at any cost. The world's most powerful guy is now married to a local hill chief's daughter with little political clout. At night, Alexander's childhood buddy Festi exhibits tremendous envy and terrible grief when he marries Roxana shortly after. Roxana gets outraged when she learns about Alexander's intimate connection with Hephaestia, but Alexander manages to calm her down. Roxana was on her way to murder Alexander when she changed her mind. Alexander claims he is prepared to be slain, yet he loves her and wants the son from her. A servant brings Alexander a drink early in the morning, but when he smells it, he understands it is poisoned. When it is found that this was done by his own men, Alexandria gets skeptical and appalled. This conspiracy enraged Alexander not only because it involved the young pages who had shared his dream, but also because it directly implicated Phyllis. Captain Alexander's royal guard and his childhood companion. Philetus tries to prove his innocence, but none of them defended him also because none of them liked him, and as after his death, his power would be carved up by the rest of them. Love, according to Vagos, evaded Alexander as much as discovering the end of the earth. Alexander marched a 150,000-man army in the spring across the Hindu Kush passes. He murders his comrade Clitus. When he sees him at night, he is dubious of the conduct. It seems that his mother's adage is now right, as his partner turned against him. Alexander becomes agitated, but he quickly persuades his warriors to fight with him in his last and bloodiest combat, the Battle of Hydaspes. He is gravely hurt by an arrow, but he survives and is subsequently lauded on her festi before dying of an unknown ailment, either caused by accident or poison, which is suspected in the film to be typhus carried with him from India. Alexander, stricken with sadness and wrath, withdraws from his pregnant wife, assuming she has slain her Pheson. In less than 3 months, he dies in the same manner as Hephaestia, keeping his promise to follow him. As Alexander's generals split his realm and quarrel over control of his corpse, Bagua sweeps on his deathbed. Finally, the elderly guy proclaims that people who pursue their big dreams will always own the world. The most powerful of them is now known as Mega Alexander the Great. Alexander, to support the channel, please subscribe, switch on alerts, and leave a like. Thank you for your time.